established in 1944, was the Bretton Woods Consensus that established institutions such as the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, and the World Trade Organization, among others. A couple of decades down the road, these introduced policies such as the structural adjustment programs that forced most developing countries to open up and liberalize their economies, encourage private-public sector partnerships, but above all, open up the African market to foreign direct investment. So many years have come in and passed by, and countries in Africa find themselves highly indebted with economies that are, flooded with goods from China and other foreign countries. Of recent, you know that Chinatown opened a shop just, in Kampala, and for those of you who are active on Twitter, you've seen the mammoth crowds of Ugandans that have gone there to purchase goods purportedly at cheap prices. The question is, where does this leave the local manufacturer of that product if, Uganda is becoming, I don't say dumping site, but yes, we shall talk about that in this Youth Roundtable. Viewers, welcome. I'm joined by a panel of distinguished panelists that I now introduce to you, and in no particular order. From the extreme left is a lawyer by training and former president of the Uganda National Students Association. Yusuf Welunga is the name. Ndugu, karibu sana.
Thank you, Brother Kidega, for inviting me for this program. I am really delighted and ready for sharing my views as regards to the topic at hand.
We are pleased to have you. Next to Yusuf and next to myself is Fortunate Mbabazi from the China Alumni Association. So she'll be telling us more about why there are so many Chinese products in Uganda's economy. Fortunate, we are happy to have you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kidega, for the invitation to this session. I'm honored and glad to be here to share my views regarding this issue.
We are pleased to have you, and we shall be joined by other panelists along the way. But let's just begin with this conversation. Yusuf,
Yes, please.
Chinatown opened a few days ago.
Yeah.
And you saw the excitement, the euphoria among Ugandans trying to go and purchase a produce or two. But China is only one of the many foreign countries that are sending their products down in Uganda and in the region. What implication does this have?
Thank you, Brother Kidega, once again. The aspect of Chinatown operating in Uganda is similar to other foreign entities that have run similar businesses within Uganda and other African countries. It has advantages and disadvantages, but I would wish to begin by giving the genesis of all this. If you remember the Industrial Revolution of 1880s, and one of the reasons why the Western powers of then decided to partition Africa, one of the reasons was, where do we sell our products? Because they had maximized in the production of their assets, and they were all almost producing similar products with the same consumers. So it was hard for them to sell within or amongst themselves. So they wanted an economy where they can easily invest a lot of money they had maximized, where they can take the goods they had produced and sell, and definitely that resulted into partitioning Africa we have today. And for the side of China, I believe was once in the same status, also suffered as Africa is suffering today. But through the leadership of the then President Mao Zedong, came up with a policy of great leap forward. This policy was aimed at transforming China from the agrarian economy to a modern industrialized economy. And it was a 5 years plan that we believe in. The 5 years plan we come up with, China would have transformed from where it was to where it is today. That plan, it had issues, but in the long run, they realized the agenda of the plan. That's why today, China has competed or is competing with the Western powers.
Or has outcompeted.
Oh, it has even outcompeted. That's why you see we've had a number of civil wars between China and US, alleging that they are exporting a lot of products into the US economy. The statistics have shown that this year alone, China has exported into US products worth 550 billion USD. And US is saying, first, we are exporting to your country around 170 billion USD products worth. So that means that China has outproduced the products vis-a-vis its population, because its population is 1,043 million. But looking at the nature of the products they are producing, the nature of the factories China alone has, for example, China has 2.8 factories within its boundaries, and all these 2.8 million factories, they are producing quite a number of goods looking at its population. So the items produced have gone beyond what the Chinese population can consume. And that one simply tells you why they have decided to look for other economies. Initially, they were exporting products in US, but US alone has 200 and 900 factories vis-a-vis its population, which is 333 million USD citizens. Look at Europe alone. Europe had around 2.7 million factories vis-a-vis its population, which is 744 million people. That means that Europe alone has factories producing almost similar goods, and it is competing within its population. US alone. Now, where does this leave Africa? Africa with 1.5 billion, with a few factories, with a few, which hasn't all that modernized its industries and so on and so forth. So Africa is looked at as an economy, as an area where they should all come and compete for. That explains as to why China's thought of coming up with the China Forum for, I think, Cooperation, and the one, I think it's even ongoing in China, that how do we bring African continent on board? We can associate with them, we can agree with them, we can trade with them, we can lend to them, they can avail to us the economy, and we do the investments, we do the businesses, we transact with them. It's what is happening today. That's why China has come up with programs to facilitate Africans to go and study from China, learn their culture, learn their language, learn how they operate, so that those who will come back to Africa can be the agents of its agenda. I believe so. So
is that a good thing or bad thing?
I said it has advantages and disadvantages.
Are you simply analyzing for us the current situation, or you're leaning towards taking a particular position? Because with the way you're putting it, it's like you're saying what China is doing works for us as well. Does it?
To a certain extent, it works for us, but to a larger extent, it does not work for us in other way. Because if your economy is being financed, is being controlled, is being managed by a foreigner, who at the end of the day will come and invest, then take back the profits and build its economy, it leaves you with nothing. But if they come as partners, you agree on terms and conditions that we shall avail this to you, but this how shall share the profits. It makes sense. If you look at our laws, for example, in Uganda, as regards to investment, they are so open. They welcome everyone to come and invest, which is a very beautiful thing. Because as Africa or Uganda, we are still lagging behind as regards to technological improvement or development. So we need these already developed countries to come and invest, to come and improvise such technologies to us, so that we can as well be in a position to move to a certain speed as they are moving. So to a certain extent, China's investment or Western investment in Africa has some advantages and has other disadvantages. But the disadvantages, if not well handled, will leave Africa still lagging behind.
Sure. I think for me the question that is fundamental is whether we have the institutional framework to regulate the disadvantages as they come. But let me just pick it up from there and introduce Fortunate to the conversation. Fortunate, just your general comments about China and many other Western countries or Eastern,
Yes.
pushing their products very cheaply into the African continent, but in this case, Uganda.
Yes, I think according to me, to some extent, it is a blessing. Like, for example, the establishment of this initiative gives room for employment of the local people. And in trade, for example, we have importers like our wholesalers, and also, for example, there are those wholesalers who are unable, who have high costs of importing from China, and cost of transportation, clearing with cargo and all that stuff. And I believe that to some extent, if these goods are supplied through this channel, like this initiative, for those who have been meeting high costs of importation and transportation would benefit. Then to an individual consumer, the prices are affordable for an ordinary person as compared to what has been happening. To some extent, that's why you've seen the massive rush for the goods.
Affordable, but in terms of quality,
I believe the quality is also well, because, for example, if these people are importing from the manufacturer, and also if they are going to integrate the supply from, like, for example, the local Chinese manufacturer being their brothers, if they establish that relationship of getting also some produce from, for example, we have many factories and manufacturers in our industrial parks. Most of them are Chinese. I believe they may also get supplies from them, since they are their fellow brothers, of which this money can be used within our economy. I think it is an advantage too. And also to the other business traders, I've talked to some extent, for some who may not afford those traveling costs, importation costs, for them it would be an advantage. The individual consumer, the prices are affordable.
Affordable.
Yes.
Okay, but
and I think we have a regulating body for the standards, our Uganda National Bureau of Standards, which monitors the importation of the products imported in the country. I think if they play that role with the quality, and then the prices are affordable to the ordinary person, I think this is an advantage.
Okay, because there are those who will say that rather than importing these ready-made products, why can't China establish a manufacturing plant in Uganda for those products, so that Ugandans locally can benefit from the entire whatever value chain of production, of distribution, of marketing, and of eventually selling. But then if you're just importing, where does this leave the local manufacturer of the same produce? Because China, as far as I know, gives credit, or gives credit at almost 0% interest rate. So it means that the cost of production of this produce is very low. So that then explains the pricing, all right? So is it a fair bargaining table, really?
I think to some of those local traders who have been importing, assuming they have been importing similar products, and these are importing the similar products, some of them, they may take advantage of getting supplied from here locally for those which they can afford, and then maybe a few import. And then because they may receive them at also affordable prices and resell them. Yes.
But just how many? Oh, okay, let me come to you, Yusuf.
Yeah.
I've read a book by Dambisa Moyo. She is a Zambian economist. In her book Dead Age, she explains why the African economy is going to take very long to grow, because of the aspect of donations, of grants, and of Africa's lack of import substitution strategy. Now, you have Chinatown that has opened up in Kampala, and there are so many products there at very affordable prices. Where does that leave the local manufacturer of the same products?
Thank you, Brother Kidega. Actually, I was even coming to the other question you put to my sister here. In my own opinion, and I believe this has been the position of the government, maybe the issue would be on implementation. The position is that instead of importing into the country, you'd better come establish an industry and produce locally. And China, I can tell you, because the program of the government is to establish around 25 industrial parks all over the country. And they have begun on that, because we have one in Mbale, which is owned by Chinese. We have one in Nakaseke, Kapeka. I think that one is Leo Shen, something of that kind.
Yes.
And they are producing locally. However, the traders locally and the population itself has not yet appreciated these goods produced locally. On allegations, put in quotes, that they are of poor quality, on allegations that the prices are so high. And if I'm a government per se, I hear such claims. Yes, the issue is we are producing locally, but these goods are not being taken up or welcomed by the nationals. And they're giving such allegations. The issue would be, how do we minimize on all this? How do we ensure that the production costs are low, so that the investors will quickly run in and invest, produce at a low cost, goods become affordable to the consumers who are the nationals, and they should produce goods of high quality. What does that mean? It means as a government has to establish and improve its infrastructures, which I believe to a certain extent the government has done so. Because an investor will ask you, I want electricity, which I believe the government has gone ahead to establish or to construct quite a number of dams that can produce electricity. For example, initially we had the Chira and Narubare, but it has gone ahead to how we have now Isimba Dam, which is producing around 180 megawatts. We have Karuma, which is yet to be commissioned. We have these small privatized that are also producing electricity, like Mobutu and others. So electricity, to a certain extent, because the statistics show that by 2040, we shall be in a position to produce around 41,730 something megawatts, which I believe is good. So the government has thought of that line, that we need electricity to attract investors so that they can produce these goods and become affordable. That's one.
No, just on that same point, because I don't know if we are having this conversation the right way, because we all seem to be emphasizing the idea of attracting investors. But why can't we focus on creating an enabling environment for the local investors to mushroom and to grow? Why are we so I don't know, like excited? Like we overly want to fall for the idea of let's attract the foreign investors, and we forget that domestically we have manufacturers who need government support, who need, like, why are we overly focusing on the foreign direct investors?
Actually, I was coming to that. The issue is, when I talk of electricity, every investor, whether local investor, whether foreign investor, will need electricity.
Will benefit from that. Yes, I agree.
When I talk of roads, every investor will need roads. I've produced my goods. I need to transport these goods to the nearby market. But even the population itself has to be supported. How?
My point of departure with you, and respectfully, is that you seem to agree with those who are saying that because we hosted NAM 77 and NAM sometime this year, we therefore had to construct roads. But the main purpose of putting up that infrastructure was to appease the foreigners who are coming into the country. The locals were secondary beneficiaries. Yet I think the locals should be the primary target to benefit from any given government policy. Then the foreigners benefit in a secondary perspective. But in your argument, the foreigners are the primary beneficiaries. Then the locals benefit secondarily.
No. The nature of the roads I'm talking of, I'm talking of border to border roads.
Yes.
Look at a road, for example, from Malaba, which switches up to Nimule. Look at the road from Malaba, which goes up to Mutukula. Which goes up to Katuna. I'm looking at such roads. Even within the country, still we need the roads that link villages to urban setting ups.
True.
That let's have a road that can link us from, for example, from Amuru, where we have people who are doing farming, and this road is connected to Gulu. This road is linked to Kampala. Are you looking at that? But what I'm simply saying, that the government itself, before you think of attracting the investors, it is better you first mind about the local economy. Because the local economy, if well built and the foundation is firm, can support the economy. And the investors, when they come, when you have a strong economy locally, they will not come and dictate. True. Rather, you'll have to become partners, because after all, you are not beggars. But if the local economy isn't built strongly, you will end up being beggars, being invited in some of these, I would say, useless summits, because I've never seen a useful summit being held in Africa, invited by Africans, fully funded by Africans. Because we end up going, but at the end of the day, the terms and conditions imposed on us are not favoring the entire continent. For example, you remember what His Excellency, the then Magufuli, saying, I don't want Chinese loans, because he realized and appreciated how dangerous were they to the economy. You remember, you see the president of Burkina Faso, what he's doing currently.
Yes.
He's saying these loans are not all good for the economy. But other presidents in Africa have gone ahead to embrace these loans without deeply analyzing how advantageous, how disadvantageous these are to the economy. So it is better to support, first build your strong economy by doing the following. One, revise your education system. Does your education system produce inventors, innovators, or job seekers? That's a very big issue. Because all these powers we are seeing, why they have become worldly great economists, because the education system supports so. But our education system as Africa is still lacking and demanding. So we need to revise that. Instead of spending a lot of years in school, and at the end of the day you come up when you cannot produce even a mere pen. It has an issue. So we have to look at our education system. How do we come up with that? Then the second, how do we build our science, technology, and innovation
and research
within the continent? What is the budget funding such? Are we prioritizing the would be important fields that can push the economy of any country to grow, or we are looking at them as the second option? So when it comes even to funding on such programs, it's an issue.
Priority.
Thirdly, how best are we utilizing the energetic youthful population? Because Africa, the population census we've just held recently shows you
the
that
average age is 16 years.
You get the point. So how best are we utilizing this population, which is youthful, to turn it into a productive population? How are we skilling this population? How are we supporting the skilling of these youth? Apart from taking them to study how to make shoes and they end there, go beyond that. You get my point? Yeah. We are producing engineers, but at what stage are these engineers coming out? Can an engineer produced from Chambogo University be in a position to produce for us an engine? Can a doctor from Mulago or Makerere be in a position to produce for us the medicine? Can a lawyer from Makerere and LODC be in a position to come up with innovative programs that can transform our legal system? We should look at all that before we think of transforming the economy. But if we continue with the kind of education we have today in Africa, I can assure you, going back to that very book you have read, we still have issues. Then on the legal perspective, look at our legal regime as regards to investment.
Yes.
Look at the Uganda Investment Authority, Tax Code, Procedure Code Act, and so on and so forth, all these laws. What are their positions? Because if you look at the investment alone in Uganda, an investor, what he needs is to obtain an investment license. No payment of fees, no thorough investigation about the investor. As long as he acquired that license, he has produced the bank statement of which holds 100,000 USD. Is good to go. Is ready to come and invest in the country. Should we limit at that, or we should put barriers to restrict the foreign investors who are thinking of coming and dumping things in this continent? Because we have an issue on that. It is not easy for you to grow your maize from Kasese. You transport your maize, take to US that you're going to sell. There are a number of avenues you'll have to go through. But in Africa, it's a visa, it's a vice versa. It's a vice versa.
True, and I hope later on in your legal argument you can help us juxtapose what you think should be the regulations vis-a-vis the World Trade Organization, whatever policies, because I know that there is also a global context that we need to trade and things like that. But fortunately, let me just get back to you.
Yes.
And the question for me is that now we have Chinese loans in Uganda and of course Africa. You have Chinese whatever factories.
Yes.
Now, so what more is China going to send into Uganda's economy?
Okay.
Almost everything seems to be coming from China, from the loans to the technocrats. The ones who are doing the roads. They're everywhere. So
okay, before I go to this,
it's the Chinese economy.
Yeah, not necessarily. Before I go on this point, I would like to inform you that some local manufacturers are already benefiting through the Chinese presence in the country, the investors. How? When you look at most projects which have been run, construction projects, look at the roads in the Albertine, the construction of the airport in the Albertine region, look at the roads like Entebbe Express, look at the road network.
Entebbe Express was constructed
by the Chinese.
It is the most expensive road in the world.
Yes, listen.
So how is that?
I'm still explaining one of the benefits, how we have benefited, even the local manufacturers. You'll find that most construction materials have been supplied by the local industries here. For example, Steel and Tube Industries, Roofings Limited. And most of these, the tiles, all the steel construction products, most of them have been supplied through these industries, and they have benefited most.
Which industries are also run by Chinese?
Not necessarily.
So it is Chinese.
Steel and Tube is not run by
Chinese supplying Chinese.
Not really.
In
Steel
Uganda.
and Tube is a Ugandan, is a local manufacturer,
Yes.
and yes, roofings, Tembo Steel, and all other steel sector manufacturers. Most of them are local, and they are the ones who have been supplying most of the construction materials to these products, to these projects initiated by the Chinese here.
Let me just
and I think this is boosting the local market.
Okay, boosting is the word, but let me just capitalize on that, because as far as I know, any money that someone pays to use the express toll, that money goes straight to China Exim Bank. That money does not even cross the Ugandan coffers, because that road was not given to us for free. It was constructed on a debt that we are paying until I don't know when. So whereas you're portraying it as though China is doing us a favor, I think they're actually taking so much away from us.
Now, to your information, most steel used for the construction of that road was supplied from Uganda factories, and even the one being used at the construction sites, the markets. Look at Kitugum Market, Kabale markets, which have been completed. Look at the roads in the north, in Moyo, in Pakwach, and through the park, the Maction Falls. All those, that steel, the construction material, most of them, to the biggest extent. Look at the construction of Isimba Dam and Karuma Dam. Most steel has been supplied by the local factories here, and they have benefited. As much as we are addressing these issues of the express road being constructed on a loan, but most steel and construction materials were being supplied by the local suppliers, by Uganda, Build Uganda, and also the enrollment for employment. For example, China has been having a scheme, and still has a scheme since 1990s, for supporting of students to study under the China government scholarship with the friendship of Uganda government. And most of the students here who have benefited are working in these sectors. Look at Sinok, look at other sectors. I myself, I have been a beneficiary. I went on scholarship and came back, worked with the Chinese. And I also worked with the local industry, but supplying Chinese consuming the products from a local company to supply them in their projects. So we were benefiting as a country to some extent. And you know, steel and construction materials achieve a lot of tax and revenue for the government. Yes, and most of these products are being consumed here from our industries. Not necessarily only Chinese construction companies, even other foreign construction companies have also benefited, and at least I can witness this, that while I was supplying, even they were supplying other companies for the construction within, which achieves a lot of revenue. Yes. Okay,
interesting. We are due for a short commercial break. Just stay with us as we delve more into Uganda's economy vis-a-vis the foreign direct investment. See you shortly after.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
We'll be back from that short commercial break. We shall just pick it up from where we stopped. But before I do that, let me just introduce you our panelists who have just joined us. I'm joined by Abraham Omia, who refers to himself as a Pan-Africanist. Abraham, we are pleased to have you.
Thank you, comrade.
All right, and also Masarukas Sadat, who is a lawyer.
Yes, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation, sir.
Sure. Yes. Let me just begin with you, Council, and just to shed light on our topic, is that what do you make about Uganda becoming, I don't use the word dumping site, but how open our economy is. Anyone can just walk in and walk out at any time that they want.
You see, we have to accept that when we embrace globalization, we are not in any way going to embrace it in part. If we accept it to be part of the global village, we should be able to accept that any country or any person anywhere around the world can establish business in Uganda. So the establishment of the Chinese businesses in Uganda must be looked at in that context. But however, we should also, first of all, look inwards and ask ourselves, what have we done not to create this vacuum? How many industries do Ugandans have that produce these Chinese manufactured products? Most of the Ugandan businessmen resorted to importing these products from these companies in China. So if the Chinese see that where the market is, what drives their economy is, one, their population. Secondly, their high level of industrialization and their low cost of production in China. So the only way to defeat that is by duplicating the same. What is the Ugandan population doing or using or leveraging to have similar cottage industries that produce similar products at a lower price? Not to go and import more than what we export. You will find that it is preferable to import an item from China than producing it here locally. So if the Chinese realize that where the market is, that's where they will go. And also the nations, especially in Africa, have realized that dealing with China to have products that that can be purchased by their economies, because the products from the West and the European countries, Ugandans don't have the purchasing power to buy those products. Now
China
makes almost similar products,
all economies.
and they have products that are economy friendly to the Ugandans. So you will regard it as a dumping site, but do you have the purchasing power to buy the high quality products?
True.
Secondly, you regard it as a form of intervention into the local economy, but you will accept that at all levels we are intertwined as the global economy. The only issue is to tap into that opportunity to see how we can leverage the small Uganda has to also sell in China, other than saying that the bringing of Chinese companies to Uganda is brought about by the creation of a vacuum by the Ugandan companies. The Ugandan companies that were here post-independence have lost the momentum of moving with the global trends. The products they are producing are more expensive than they were years back. So also the businessmen saw an opportunity in making a profit. So the only issue is cutting out middlemen. That is what China is doing. Why don't we take these products to where these importers come from? Let we establish branches there. Let whoever wants our products find them in those countries. You'll find that this is also supported by the low purchasing power. Ugandans don't have money in their pockets. So whatever they can afford is at a low cost that can only be provided or produced in China. The only alternative is to en masse grow the local industry, the local manufacturing industry, not to allow the Chinese to have a market here when actually the products can be produced here and at a lower price. When you move at the legal implications, we are at a level whereby the IMF is in global competition with the BRICS, and you'll find that the taking over of loans from China is a way of neutralizing the reach and strength of the Western powers and the IMF. And you'll find that the Chinese loans and the Chinese support to African countries is having less restrictions, but more of neutralizing the dollar. So if the actual states are now surviving on loans on loans for constructing roads, constructing hospitals, and all other infrastructure that African countries need from China, it is now very possible and minute for us to expect that they will not allow Chinese companies, Chinese supermarkets, Chinese products to flood the market, because there are conditions that are tied that actually are much more friendlier than those that are imposed by the IMF. Yes.
Wow, interesting. Deep context right there. Abraham, let us hear your Pan-African views on this.
Well, first and foremost, thank you very much for the opportunity, for the invite of giving me to get back here and share my perspective on this very pertinent issue. Just before I make my submission, maybe in one way or the other, the incidents that we are seeing with this very particular sector of business, it's just a manifestation that the center has failed to hold the different branches together. And things are tearing and falling apart. Previously, we have seen an attack in the noble traditional professions, the like of the medicine, the law, and perhaps business would be the fallback position for any other Ugandan. But if you look at such kind of crisis happening at this particular moment, it leaves citizens in a confused state, because those who had failed from the other sector would take a look that this could possibly be their side hustles. But how do you see someone who is the manufacturers dealing direct? I would think in a perspective that if, by the virtue of the fact that they cannot be chased away, they would be given condition that by the virtue of the fact that they're dealing in the manufacturing, they wouldn't be allowed to sell things directly to the customers. At least let the middlemen, because you realize that these are the very people who are being given tax holiday. They are being given tax holiday, and then whichever the taxation or the money that is being imposed on them, it's very minimal. But there are Ugandans who are still importing these very similar products, bringing them here, and you realize that these people are selling it almost at the factory price. Now, how do you expect a trader in the Chikubu to survive or thrive in this very particular economy. It's extremely mind-boggling. I was trying to look through the statistics, and I was seeing the Chinese investment in Uganda growing at a rate of 0.76 annually in the past 5 years. And in the manufacturing sector, their investment stands at the percentage of 63.3. That is in the a partition of the foreign investment. So you realize that partly we shall not deprive ourselves from the profit repatriation that these people are taking back. And you realize that it's creating a section whereby we're having, of course, a group of Ugandans who are living in extreme opulence and extravagance. And there are those, the 180s of this country, who are grappling in abject poverty. You realize they thought of finding a living through carrying out a petty business by being out the middlemen or the brokers in this very particular business. Those, the big dogs who are manufacturing it, they're bringing and giving it to the consumers at the factory price. Now, how do you expect this particular kind of people to thrive? It's extremely a very terrible situation. Maybe the government need to invent other mechanisms to ensure that this very particular good is being curtailed.
So, but otherwise, we are headed for tough times.
Surely.
Is that the point that you're trying to
It's very
trying to make?
inevitable. Because we have been saying this would be the last fallback position for anybody who had invested in millions of money in the school to study medicine, to study law. But at the end of the day, you have
to unemployment.
Exactly.
They now find business as their last line of defense.
Exactly.
And even that business is now being penetrated deeply.
Exactly.
So where does that leave the Ugandan businessman? I think that is the fundamental question for us, but also generally our economy, because Omia talks about capital flight, that you have these people who are coming and purportedly investing money in your economy, but the money that they take out is way much more than what they're actually bringing in. So in the long run, we are being shortchanged. I want to bring you back, Yusuf, into the conversation. And so moving forward, how best can we, because we are talking about building the local producer. But how is that going to happen if we are not putting enough money in, for example, Uganda Development Bank, so that these producers can have access to soft credit? Because the China government gives money to its investors at almost 0% interest rate. So to them, capital is not an issue.
True.
But for us here, commercial banks lend money at what, 18, 24%? So what strategies can we begin to look at to ensure that the BDCO producer, I don't know, Nightil and all these local manufacturers begin to actually do the job that is quality and our products can compete even on the global market?
One is to prioritize the funding on given activities or items. Look at the way we are funding quite a number of programs within the government or within Africa. You realize that there are some programs we are funding and we are giving a lot of funds, which I believe can as well be reduced, and we prioritize those activities or programs that can help us build our national economy, which is a bit strong. For example, it has been the song all the years that agriculture is the backbone of the economy. But what funds are we allocating to agriculture? Which innovations have we introduced to agriculture? How have we mobilized the population to add value onto what they are producing? What has been the government's position as regards to protecting the local farmers, to helping the farmer for trade and sell their products at the national and international levels? What are the restrictions being put in place to protect the local investor or the local farmers? How are we funding and helping these local investors to grow economically within the borders of the country? The government has come up with some programs per se. For example, integrating the region. The government has gone ahead to work closely with other nearby neighbors, because at the end of the day, it is more cheaper, it is more easier for a Ugandan to run and sell in Rwanda as opposed to run and sell in Europe.
But just to hold you right there, I hope that as you're giving us those facts, you don't forget to mention that on several occasions, our milk, our maize has been stopped.
It was what our, yes.
So it means that the issue of quality, whether you are taking your maize to Kenya just here next door or to America, no one wants something that is not of quality.
That goes back to what I've said, innovation, adding value to what you're producing. Which technology have you employed to enable the local investor to produce something of good quality that can be even sold at an international market? So, as a country, what we have to do, I still go back to my position of education. Our education still has, I believe there's a big gap as regards to producing people who can be in a position to help us develop our economy, who can be innovators within our economy. Education is an issue. Then the funding per se, and even borrowing. I don't know whether Kidega, you've ever done any business.
Yes.
Any business done and is surviving on loans may not survive. If you start a business and the entire capital you are borrowing from person A, I'm sure that business will never grow. Or if you are to borrow, it is better you negotiate about the funds to be borrowed to enable you run your business. We have other jurisdictions where I believe if you happen to get loans from there, they may not even charge you any interest. Can we think of going to that direction? Look at in the Arabian world. Arabian world will never give a loan with interest. Look at the loans from China, the loans from IMF, the loans from World Bank. Their interest rate is so high in that they keep Africa and Uganda per se not to leave the status quo they may be in at that moment. Can we think of switching, go to Arabian world, get loans with interest free so that we invest and pay back exactly what we borrowed? Can we support the local investors so that they can in the long run as well support the economy by borrowing? I mean by lending the country or the government to grow its economy. Can we think of such avenues and technology? Because look at China, for example. I got to know that there is Chinatown operating in Kampala through a Chinese app. How are they advertising their products? How are we advertising our locally produced products? We are using the foreign-made apps to advertise our goods. Can we support the IT system so that we can as well advertise our products globally and can easily be appreciated by the people in various jurisdictions? China is using TikTok here to advertise its Chinatown. In Uganda or in Africa, we need such apps. We need WhatsApp, we need Facebook, which are not made by us to advertise our products.
But even the most ironic case is that in Uganda, some of those platforms are closed.
That's the issue.
Facebook is closed.
That's why I'm saying, so how are we...
Leave alone having capacity to make your own Facebook as a country. The platforms that are there already, some have been closed by the government.
I agree.
So now, where will the young person who has produced their, I don't know, shoe or something, market it? So now, it's tricky.
True. And I think there should be a political will. Before we move in to shut down some of these apps, let's analyze it at a wider perspective. Let's not limit our thinking to political line, that this app will be used to influence people politically towards this end. Can we look at it in terms of economy? Can we look at it in terms of promoting what we have here locally? Advertising your tourism sector, advertising all your culture, advertising so on and so forth. And instead of thinking of that, this app will affect us politically. We should have a wider perspective, a wider thinking before we take a decision on a given decision to be made. Then, my brother was saying it is good for people to come and dump things in our country. My brother said here that business has been considered almost to be the last resort. Yes, I've gone to school, My parents have paid for me, but at the end of the day, I've failed to get a job. What do I need to do? I need to resort to setting up maybe a chapati kiosk. I need to set up a small business, and I run the business. Now, I want you to imagine a student who has gone through a skilling center, who has been taught how to make shoes. He has come out, is producing shoes, and is selling them maybe 50,000 per pair. Chinese come and set up also business selling shoes at 10,000. Do you see this young man staying in the business?
No.
Do you see this young man surviving 10 to 5 years to come? And do you see him becoming productive and useful to the economy? The answer will be in the negative.
And I think the question for me that I'll have to pose to council later and just have it in mind is the protectionism. Are we in an era where we can still use protectionism strategies whereby you sort of bar foreign direct investment, or you limit the amount of produce that comes into your country? I think we'll have to discuss that a bit later. But I have to bring in Fortunate at this point in time. Fortunate, because clearly on this panel you have made the argument for the Chinese and etc. But in the long run, where does this leave, for example, the Ugandan local producer? Because whereas it sounds good that the Chinese are doing all these things and blah, 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 in the long run, where will it leave our economy? You mentioned some, whatever benefits, such as employment and things like that, but those appear to be short-term benefits in my view. In the long run, can we sustain the Chinese and other foreign direct investors taking charge of our economy?
Well, in my view, to some extent, I think, like my colleague Abraham was talking about, protect the legal, maybe balance of trade, like Chinatown could also incorporate like receiving supplies from the local manufacturers, imports, and also maybe from the fellow Chinese manufacturers. I think would be a fair deal.
You will see that deal still has China almost everywhere. It has China on the, whatever producing side. It has China on the supply side.
Even the local.
So where is the local businessman in that value chain? Is the question for me. They are not in the production. They are not in the supplies. They are not in the marketing.
I think.
We just chase these guys away and
No, not
break and
necessarily.
build something
No.
like that.
One.
But this argument or this discussion is not sentimental in the sense that we are trying to say the Chinese government is maybe bad or something, but we are trying to look at how we have a win-win situation.
Yes.
Because you don't want to have a state where the people are left with almost nothing.
I think that's why there is like buy Uganda, build Uganda. Yes, this is covering that. Look at the industrial parks, Mbale, Kapeka, and other areas. And then the revenue, for example, like the use of electricity. And then this pushes for improvement of the road network and all those facilities. And I think we are benefiting. Yes.
Okay.
Because when you look at most of these factories in the manufacturing sector, most people employed our local people. Even people pay taxes in form of payee, and we earn revenue.
Okay, but of course the question there that has continuously come up is with regards to the local content bill. Is that yes, whereas these Chinese industries are employing employing local people, what is the level of employment? Are they being employed in top, whatever positions, or they are being employed to sweep the you know,
Okay.
I'll
bring in this issue.
Cut the grass.
I'll
So
bring
at
in
what
the-
level
I'll bring in this
employment
issue of
they-
the since the early 90s. I think over 1,000 Ugandans have benefited from the China scholarship scheme, and most of them have been trained. Others are working within the Chinese companies, while others are using their skills in other sectors. What we need is maybe to push for them to share that knowledge obtained from China. Maybe some of them need the connection to use that knowledge. Like, for example, we already have Huawei technologies for innovation of the technological issues and network. And many Ugandans, maybe whom have already benefited from the Chinese government scholarship, are serving. So, and even there is need for a platform. We have, like, for example, a China Alumni Association. We have so many professions who have been trained in China, in the medical, agriculture, in many different sectors. Some of them need the connection to get there, to share these skills obtained from China in our local and others.
Yeah.
Yes. Some of them need that, that chance. Yes. They will be able to integrate that knowledge of which he was addressing, like in education. Because some of the knowledge we cannot afford in our education sector. That's why some of them have got the opportunity to train in China. And there are very many PhD holders. Some of them need the connection to get into our systems and serve and share and do the innovation using those skills. And I think this is an opportunity for the labor to use this chance. They may not necessarily be employed in the Chinese companies in the local, but even in our already established schemes. Yes, which there is a gap there. Yes.
Okay. Interesting. I want to bring in council, and council I because the idea is about protectionism. But also, as we discussed that, we must bear in mind that Uganda is part of a global village. That where trade is governed by the World Trade Organization. But I want to read for you Article 1 of the GATT. GATT in full is the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade.
Yes.
And just Article 1 goes this way, if you may just quickly, is that like products from all WTO members must be accorded the same treatment as the most advantageous treatment according by a member to the products of any state under the jurisdiction of that member. That if you are producing phones in Uganda, you should not allocate, you should not accord these phones a special treatment as the funds that are coming in from China or from USA. So the question, Council, is that is protectionism viable in this day and era? Can Uganda say we are going to protect our local investors from direct competition by having these policies that limit products from China coming into Uganda?
Yes, briefly, colleagues stated that I support dumping of products in
As a matter of clarity, allow me first clarify before you go any further. As my comrade associating me with conquering with the idea of dumping, that would be a blunt attack on me. My line of argument was on the matter that we cannot do away with these people, but we should have strict regulation. And my perspective was, if they're on the manufacturing end, let them remain there. On the scope of commerce, let's have the netizens participating, being the wholesalers, the retailers, but not from the factory straight. They come and interface with the consumers. But if you associate me with agreeing with, I strongly disagree. Because I really liked your opening remarks that whereas all this is happening, there are pros and cons that we cannot go away with. But we want to tilt the balance such that we are on the advantageous side. And that is where I bring my perspective. But personally, I strongly disagree with the idea of Uganda being the dumping ground for those foreigners.
Yeah.
Yes, we should agree that Ugandans themselves have the largest importers of Chinese products. So if we are talking about dumping, it is us that are actually dumping those products first before the Chinese bring them. And now the Chinese have resorted to coming to where the dumping site is. So we cannot now first blame the Chinese. It will be hypocrisy. Proceeding to the issue of protectionism, when you read the GATT, these provisions in the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs have been replicated in other policies and protocols. You read the East African Community Protocol, you read the COMESA, also now read the African Free Continental Trade Area. You realize that they are aimed at broadening and opening up spaces so that everybody on the continent, wherever they are, can practice and can sell their product without any form of restriction. So if we are to move in that direction, or we want to isolate ourselves from the entire world, the purpose of these agreements, purposes of these protocols, is to create a semblance of a unified economy, to create a purpose that globalization is here and we must embrace and work within it. It will be unconscionable for products from Uganda to have favoritism compared to similar products from Kenya or Tanzania. And in this regard, we broaden it to similar products from Europe, similar products from China. The only advantages Ugandans have, and it is also in the pipeline, and also that's why I have reservations on the local content bill. If Ugandans are not innovative enough, if they are not producing quality products, they will be at a disadvantage at the global and international market. That will not save them. Even a Ugandan that is exposed and has traveled all over the world will not be comfortable purchasing a substandard product because it is of a Ugandan. They will like a quality product. So Ugandans must at all times put at the core quality and of the services that they are providing, because we are not moving backwards. We are moving. We are going in the front direction. Secondly, when we look at the industrial revolutions that happened way back in other countries before we embraced the same, there are stages they pass through, and we are just at the lip of those stages. You look at countries like India. India has very many cottage industries, has the highest population. Secondly, it has the highest number of people that Indians that are living outside of India. How are they using this expertise? It is by using that opportunity for Indians that are abroad to bring that knowledge back to India, to produce products that are at the standard of the international market. What stage is Uganda at? It's at the stage of labor externalization. We are sending more of Ugandans at all levels, educated and not, to these countries. We are at the stage what we are calling at the reaping stage. The other countries are reaping from externalization of labor. We are not yet there. We are just now sending people regardless of the circumstances. It is after reaching that stage that these Ugandans realize that this can be replicated home. At the moment, we are at the stage whereby we find that everything is wrong about Uganda. The only solution is through having experts or expertise from the other countries. I often ask this question. I also had this question regarding the coming of Chinatown here. If China that gives scholarships to a Ugandan to go and study technology in China changes its mind and says that now we are bringing the university here in Uganda, will you go to study in that university? I'm asking.
Good question.
So if China is allowing to go and import their products in China, it's saying no, it is easier, let me bring the shop there. Why are you saying now don't bring the shop? I would like to come and get those products from there. It is the same.
It defeats
the purpose. Yes. So the issue is we must understand that there is a vacuum created by the nationals. The only way to fill that vacuum is to grow our local content and to be of quality to compete at the international level.
Fair enough. But just on the issue of protectionism, is that this year European Union has passed a policy on coffee that they will not allow coffee that is not deforestation free. That you cannot cut down trees, grow coffee, then you sell it in the EU.
Yes.
So you can see that it is actually a protectionism regulation sort of policy, only that it is being carved in an angle of maybe climate change and etc. But it is in fact telling us that your coffee will have to pass through some sort of scrutiny before it gets into our country. So how maybe it is about how you do it, but I think protectionism is still working today.
True. The protectionism policies differ and basing on the element that they want, basing on the idea and objective of that policy. The issue as to why there is a protectionism policy on regards to coffee may differ from the protectionism that Uganda should embrace on regards to imported products that are from China. For instance, if you look at the importation of cars, Uganda put up a policy. Cars manufactured from a certain period of years should not be bought in Uganda.
Yeah.
That is fair enough, but it did not in any way stop the importation of those very vehicles, provided that they are within the range of years that are required. Uganda should accept that in itself continues to create importation. But the issue, the solution to that is having locally produced products. You can protect the economy fair enough, but to a certain unlimited extent. At the end of the day, whereas the European Union wants coffee that is from non-deforested areas, it will still import coffee. Nonetheless. The only solution to, an European will not argue and say that I want coffee locally produced from, because they will have to continue importing, but with the limited restrictions, because there is no option at the moment. This comes back to Uganda. There is no option at the moment in regards to importation of certain products. Not until we have the capacity, we have the industries that produce similar or higher quality products than those that are imported, no protectionism policy will stop the importation.
Fair enough, fair enough. My last question goes to you, Abraham, and that's in regards to globalization. It seems to be a tool or a bandwagon that we have all jumped on. Just like how we had the structural adjustment programs coming in the late 90s. The African countries just, jumped on them and we saw the effects later on. Right now, we seem to be locked up in this idea of, oh, we are one world, oh, we are one, people and all that. But you see, that argument is applied only when it works for the other side. All right? No, we are one people. Open up and let us trade together. But, I mean, first allow me grow first. So we can trade as equals. Because you asked us to trade, but what am I going to give you? I'm giving you raw coffee seeds. That is not manufactured, that is not processed. That's what you want me to trade on with you? So okay, is it high time that Africa says, wait, this idea of globalization, we might not be ready for it now?
Well, on the idea of globalization, in my own opinion and the perspective, if you talk of the structural adjustment program, it reminds me of the long-term history that I like so much. When it was being brought, some of the then intellectuals at the hill of Macquarie University that didn't know about Mao and the late Jacob, they stood against it. And when government tried to amend some policies in favor of it, they strongly dissociated themselves and disagreed with that. On that very perspective, we are not at the same range and we are not at the same capacity. So if we bring in the idea of globalization that, we're in the same global village, we are one and so forth, it's acting in the favor of a particular group of people.
Yes.
And it's extremely disadvantageous to us. That not only like a low-income earners, but a country whose economy extremely below. Still, it will not pull up our country's economy to a certain level where they are, but rather it's going to keep us grappling in the abject poverty. And we shall not support that. So it's high time we ourselves, we first dissociate ourselves. Let us reach a particular point where we can have a very materialistic ground. We can all benefit from one another, but not the Europeans and so forth. For them, they are reaping huge benefits. And for us, we have no benefit. But at the end of the day, they're coming and they're convincing you. They're convincing you that, we are one people.
Civilization has come and you have to, interact and open up your borders and things like that.
Which doesn't make sense. But in a long way run, they're coming and for them, they're reaping the advantages. For us, we are not saying that. I really like the analogy that my brother used in the perspective of bringing the China shop. Is it the Chinatown?
Chinatown.
Some sorts of it in Uganda. And he compared it with bringing the university. There would be no problem. But the baseline question that we should be asking ourselves before we jump into acceptance of such is, does the quality and the criteria suit or protect our consumers. I was reading through the tweets, of recently in Uganda, we are having social media seemingly to be the only functioning institution where you can get the information. Of course, in several situations, I dissociate myself and I don't want to be merchandised with false information. And I remember a certain client was giving advice to fellow people who were reading the comment section that, buy other materials or buy other items, but leave alone the utensils. If you get the suspense and you put on the fire, it turns red there and there. I do not know whether that would have been just a malicious venom against a very particular entity, but in one way or the other, it might be giving a clue to something. Have we really ascertained the quality that the product these people are giving us?
But also speaking of quality, what option is more sustainable? Asking the Chinese to set up, say whatever here, institution here, or our government being intentional about enhancing the capacity of Makerere, Busitema, and everything else. Because two options: either you choose to enhance the capacity of your institutions domestically so that they can train students with that skill and knowledge, or you can choose to ask the Chinese to bring here their university. Which is more sustainable?
The most sustainable option would be, of course, the government capacitating its citizens. But on the same ground, when my brother was arguing in the line that our education system and so forth, we have had people who, in one way or the other, insufficient. Last time we had a very pertinent conversation pertaining brain drain. We realized that the expertise of this country, they're not here.
Yes.
Because they're not being given a favorable ground to thrive in. They are all in those European countries whereby their expertise, the skills and knowledge is being given a particular value that they really feel it's worth. So the baseline question or the most viable approach would be
doctors at first strike in the streets.
And
it
it has become the modus operandi. There is no particular year where the government has been pushed to the wall and deployed its interns freely. Yet these are people offering service to Ugandans. The Wananchis of this country, freely of charge, they are taking 70% of the workload. But in the past 5 years that I've been actively following, there is no particular year that the government, the Ministry of Health just comes in and says we are deploying all these people. You realize that it's either, at times it pushes me to the wall to think that Uganda is one of the countries that has had the most beautiful policies and laws around, but enforcing has been left to the dogs to enforce them, or they have failed totally to enforce it. So you realize that these people, they must strike for them to be deployed and offer service free at cost. Yet not very many years ago, 2001, when Comrade Kwarabuko was doing his internship, you had the capacity and privilege by doing the noble profession of medicine and surgery, being airlifted from Ugundi into the airport up to his internship site that was in West Nile, being provided with all the necessary materials, allowances, and so forth. So you realize that this is the same situation that is pushing the very many expertise. They just thrive to get the knowledge, and they say it's well. Our country is not wishing us well. This one we do this somewhere else. So you realize that there are very many people who have the capacity, but they are not being given a very favorable ground to do all this. And maybe to the very few investments, maybe in one way or the other, that is being given in the names that we are giving it to Ugandans. These are strictly puppets who are, pushing on a particular goal of someone else. They're being given, this investment, we are giving it tax-free, we are giving land, we are giving all the necessities and so forth. But in a real actual sense, it's not what they're aiming at. There is something for them. They're having huge chunks of money. They're putting it aside. The basic we can take a look at is the hospital, whose construction has been in the pipeline, but nothing feasible has been seen. But we have the Aga Khan Hospital here in Akawa. A very minimal budget, but they've put up a very genuine structure. And the other ones whereby we are using it, buy Uganda, build Uganda. We are not seeing anything. So it's high time the government, first and foremost, empowers or capacitates its citizens to do something worthwhile. Then we put on the blame that, we have citizens who are extremely very incapacitated. We cannot do this. The only option we can resort to is by allowing these people to come and set their industries here. Yes, we do not disagree with that. Let them set their industry. Let's have the limit. Let them remain in the factory. We have a standard prices, the quality and quantity, and we allow the Wananchis of this country participate in the scope of commerce. That is as wholesalers, the retailers, and so forth. So that at least we have the balance. Because the fact that we cannot escape from it is we cannot do away without these people.
You've spoken so well, but then to end like that, I cannot do away without these people.
in one way or the other.
if we build our capacity, we can actually be
exactly for the
independent.
For the meantime, that's why I'm saying. At the meantime, we cannot do away with that. Let us build our capacity. No.
Okay, our time is fast spent. So I'll give us just 1 minute each to give us parting shots. Just look to the camera and give the parting shots in just a minute. I'll give you Yusuf as I move towards Council Sadat.
As a government of Uganda, my opinion would be is what we need to put into place to enable us build our economy strongly would be to address the issue of corruption. This year alone, this financial 2024-2025, the government allocated 207.3 billion USD to be invested into industrialization. I don't know whether it will serve its intended purpose or it will end up into people's pockets. So the issue of corruption, it should as well be addressed. If someone has been allegedly committed the corruption, let him be arrested, let him be prosecuted, and it should be punished as required by law. Not him or her ending up being granted bail and the case ends there. So the issue of corruption has to be addressed at all costs.
Fair enough. Yes.
Yes, my
Fortunate.
last word is for me, as my dear colleague here mentioned about our education and skills. We have many foreign trained Ugandans whose skills have not yet been explored, and they are ready to share those skills in all the sectors. Thank you very much. And by the way, many of them are now being employed in other countries, medical personnel and others. Yet we are saying we are lacking the skills. We have them, they just need a ground to penetrate the system and produce or serve.
Yes, Abraham.
Well, in my closing remarks, of course, perhaps, as my brother has clearly stated, the most cancerous incidents that we are now battling as a country, being corruption, it needs to be addressed. But also, if we use the other mirror or the other lens to view the entire matter, it may just be a manifestation that either those who have been entrusted with authority, the mantle, to do or to oversee a particular sector, they are too busy, or they are less concerned, or they are even incompetent. Because everything that is happening, we are seeing attack on different sectors, simply not because there are no people who are responsible for overseeing it and curtailing such kind of calamities before. The cascade extends to the greater population, from the medical, the law, now again the businesses. The business sector, which would be the fallback position, has also received its elastic to break the camel's back. It's a very disappointing scenario, but I would only think my clarion call to the government and all the well-wishers of this country. We rise up to the occasion. First and foremost, we fight the cancerous incidents, which is corruption. We bring it to an end, and we change the narrative. If those who have been entrusted with the mantle are not capacitated to do their job, it's not a lifetime reward. We can do the reshuffle. We first give them a break and bring some other people. In one way or the other, we may uphold the status quo of the Uganda that we once dreamt of the Uganda that we dream of in 2040. That would be my closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Yes, Sadat.
Yes. First of all, we must accept as a nation that we cannot be a jack of all trade. We must go back to the norm and see and ask ourselves, what can Uganda do better than any other country in the world, so that it can sell that to the international market. In this, we shall be able to be competitive in the global market, and also to be able to harness that skill further. It is absurd that we ran away from the norm whereby we are one of the food hubs and suppliers of coffee in the region and on the continent. So let we harness our agricultural potential, our good climate, to see that there are products that we can put on the international market than no any other country in the world, other than competing in issues of commerce, issues where we are actually playing second fiddle. It is acceptable that we can retreat on one ground and advance on the other. So my submission is that we accept that we are in a global village and we must find ways of surviving and harnessing our potential in the entire global market. Thank you.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you very much, Yusuf. Thank you, Fortunate. Thank you, Abraham. And thank you, Sadat, for your time. Of course, to the viewers, it's always a pleasure having you every single Wednesday afternoon. Let's continue with the conversation at #YouthRoundtable and at Civic Space TV online. Until next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.